Okay, are we ready to go?
Chair,
No.
there was some issues with internet that the IT staff is trying to work out. If the commissioners are good, we're ready to go. If you wish to wait until the Wi-Fi is figured out, we can wait.
Yeah, if we could wait, that'd be great. If we'll give it 5 minutes or so.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and call our study session to order. First item on the agenda is the use permit UP 2239 self-storage facility. And my understanding is the design review piece of this is being continued, or is the whole thing being continued?
Chair, Samantha Novotny, Planner 2, Planner 1, excuse me. I'm predicting my own future. It's fully coming off of the agenda. It won't be discussed at all.
Okay, so item 1 is off the agenda.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, easy enough. We'll jump to item number 2. Noah, you've got DR 22-127 Madera.
Chair Simon, Planning Commission, this is Noah Schumerth, Planner 2, presenting for you tonight a study session for the design review case 22-127 for the Madera Gilbert project. A brief note about this project was that there was a system error that ran from January 9 to January 12, where a number of resubmittals to the town were basically, for lack of a better term, wiped off the face of the planet. And so with that in mind, there was a number of submittals that we did not know had already come in. And so therefore, by the time that we were aware of this error, the staff report had already been submitted to you, very, very close to the end of the addendum timeline. And so you received a set of exhibits last night, just introducing you to some of the changes that have been made to this project. But what I'm going to do this evening is give you an introduction to this project, as well as walking you through some of those changes on behalf of the applicant. The areas of input have also changed slightly from the staff report that you received. 3 of them remain the same, but a 4th one related to mixed-use zoning has been reworded to focus more on talking about land use distribution rather than issues with anything pertaining to future zoning, and I'll explain that in just a moment. So just to introduce you to this site, it's one that you are probably quite familiar with as a commission. It is a site that's about 15 acres at the corner of Ray and Higley Roads. It was the subject of a rezoning in 2022 to convert the entire site from shopping center to a mixture of multifamily medium, shopping center, and general commercial. And I apologize that shopping center is repeated twice on that slide. And so you can see the zoning arrangement there. So this design review case is going to relate specifically to the general commercial parcels and to the multifamily medium parcel. And the proposal is for a set of 4 buildings that are of varying uses that I'll walk you through. The first the first 2 buildings are in the general commercial parcels adjacent to Ray Road. Those are loft above buildings, so they have commercial on the ground floor and about 63 units between the 2 buildings on the top floor. And then in the back, there's 2 multifamily buildings that have frontage for a co-working space, multifamily amenities, things of that nature, facing that internal drive that runs through the center of the site, and then multifamily units in the back. And then subsequent parking around the first 2 buildings for commercial tenants, mixed with some of the multifamily parking, and then the unit-specific multifamily spaces in the rear of the site then. So just to give you some basic details on the site, we're dealing with a site that's 276 residential units. So it's about 20 dwelling units per acre is what that comes out to. There's about 19,000 square feet of commercial and retail space. That number has gone down a bit since the staff report that was submitted to you, and I'll explain why in just a moment. The site design includes a public plaza near the commercial buildings, a private green space spine between multifamily buildings as the 2 kind of predominant open space features, as well as a variety of covered arcade spaces, things like that. And then a pedestrianized kind of internal street network that you'll see between buildings 1 and 2, which is kind of a shared street concept, and then the main drive through the middle that has some unique features designed to be accommodating to pedestrians. From what you've seen from the original staff report that was filed, there's 3 primary changes that I'd like to draw your attention to. The first is that there's an administrative use permit that is being filed by the applicant to allow for shared parking. The staff had previously deemed this site underparked, and while the reduction of commercial space has led to a reduction in the number of spaces necessary, given how the multifamily is being parked, we've continued to push for an administrative use permit, and we'll be working on that concurrently with the applicant. Second, there's a reduction in the parking requirement, again, due to the total commercial floor area, and then the tie-in of those shopping center parcels to a master site plan, though the improvement specific to those pads has not changed at this time, and there's restrictions to how much those can be changed from a design perspective. They're going to be treated as separate design reviews because the ownership is different for those parcels, and they're deemed separate from this site, but they are part of this kind of master site plan, as you can see by some of the site improvements and the signage on this plan, and we've discussed this with the applicant prior. On that note about zoning, there were a pair of retail spaces that were proposed in the front of Building 4, one of the multifamily buildings. I've put a rendering up with it circled as an example of what that might look like when built. There was an initial conversation that happened with the applicant that they may be interested in mixed-use large zoning, which was part of the mixed-use proposal that was passed on January 24. They've identified that given the market conditions and the desired certainty and kind of short-term, the development process, the applicant has decided that rezoning is something that shouldn't be really the subject of active conversation. We should continue to pursue this site design as if we were going forward with the present zoning, and this can be determined at a later date. Staff would wish to still gather feedback about whether these types of retail spaces in the front of Building 4, which you can see on the screen to your right, I actually believe it's in front of you, directly in front of you, would still be something that would be encouraged maybe to think about long term. It might be in the interest of the town to continue to see that kind of use, a greater amount of that use in these spaces, the retail and commercial, that is. The landscape plans, once again, just to reiterate what I said before, there's this public green space plaza near Building 2 commercial frontages designed to complement those spaces, the covered arcade spaces inside on the interior of those 2 front buildings, a private open space spine for multifamily tenants, and then some private amenity spaces within the multifamily area. I'll show you 2 features that pull out those different open space components from the applicant. The landscape plan on the left shows the dark green areas, which I just mentioned, the amenity areas in the middle of the multifamily buildings, that open space spine between them, that's behind a secured fence, and then the open space plaza near Ray Road in front of Building 2. And then the areas that you see in light green there are a mixture of screening areas as well as paved areas and landscaped areas that are kind of creating the interstitial space, I guess, around those buildings. On the right, you'll see the circulation plan that furthers how all of these different spaces are connected together. Those orange areas that you see are really pedestrian paved areas meant for a variety of different activities related to the commercial land uses and to smooth site circulation between a number of higher intensity uses. You'll see that's also connected directly to the Banning Street signal by a large pedestrian paved area as a way to tie in the Agritopia development and the surrounding neighborhood to this development. And then you'll see a variety of paths and sidewalks that kind of connect this in a pretty strong grid pattern. And then going ahead to some of the changes that you've seen from the last packet that you received, the first is the addition of a dog park or a pet amenity located on the southwest corner of the site. You'll see that with number 1 on the map on the screen. Number 2 is the addition of direct connections between the private open space spine in the middle of the development and then the multifamily buildings. That's done by both connecting hallways with pathways, kind of allowing all units more direct access to that space with the playground and landscaping and seating, as well as direct access from each of the units, which you'll see here in that open space spine. You'll see some of those connections illustrated in that graphic there. The third is adjustments to the front landscaping to match the streetscape theme and LDC requirements for tree spacing and landscape distribution. And the final change is the change in landscape materials. There's been the removal of a couple species due to either health concerns that have been brought up with these species or to better align with the low water use species lists that the town uses when evaluating proposals. And then here's these for your reference again. The final step that I want to bring forward to you, as shown in the requested input slide before, are the elevations. And what I've done is try to arrange these in ways with notes to try to help illustrate what part of the development they're going to be contributing to. And so this one is the first building, Building 1. You'll see the direct Ray Road frontage there, and the frontage on the internal pedestrian drive below, or behind that rather, and then the two side elevations. You'll see that with Building 2 to the east. You'll see the Ray Road frontage that will include the pedestrian plaza in front of that building, that kind of green space, and then the internal pedestrian drive, the other side. You'll see the multifamily buildings here then carry a lot of the same theming with the Nichiha board, the stucco coloring, the overall material palette, and those metal details that you'll see each of the balcony structures being built within carry over to that building. And you'll see that on that internal pedestrian drive, still trying to create kind of a retail-like front area, kind of transparent frontage, the multifamily amenity areas, the clubhouse, the leasing office, things like that, a co-working space. Those will be included in those two frontages there. And then you can see the rear view, what would be facing Dublin Street in the rear, although there'd also be a view fence and screening there. And then you've got the side elevations of all of the multifamily buildings, and those are very similar between the two of them. I tried to pick out the two that would be facing into that open space spine to try to illustrate to you how the building frontages might contribute to a kind of a spine that's full of more mature landscaping over time. I want to share some perspectives to show how these buildings may look in, if constructed. You'll see that this is the Ray Road frontage as if viewed from the corner of Ray Road and Banning Street where that signal is. And you'll see that there is just a variety of materials, again, different colors of stucco, a lot of movement on the facades, the Nichiha board, and then trying to really emphasize that commercial frontage and easy commercial accessibility in the front. Here's a view from the west entrance on Banning Street. You could see that internal drive starting to take form. There's perpendicular parking and then wide sidewalks and covered patio space on either side. Again, trying to create as pleasant of a pedestrian experience as possible. Here's a view from the center of the development. That's looking at the two multifamily buildings and what their frontage might be. You could see that open space spine, how that turns around the corner to the left and kind of carries the street network at a pedestrian scale into the multifamily component, even if that will be fenced off and be private for multifamily tenants only. And then this is the rear view as if viewed from the screening area behind the parking area near Dublin Street. So that gives you just an idea of what that might look like if constructed kind of with the single family homes that are behind this development. Just referencing some of the colors and materials that I mentioned, the mixture of stucco colors, the Nichiha, the fiber cement board, both with the wood finish and also with a painted solid matte appearance to it. Also a brick veneer that's used in a variety of places, especially on the sides of the buildings to try to add some visual interest to those facades. Some CMU foundation block. And again, that's used consistently through all four buildings that you are presented before you for Madera. A couple of notes and changes that are important to note from that original staff report. The first is that what I mentioned earlier, that the mixed-use zoning is not going to be immediately pursued, and so we'd like to withdraw it from as a discussion topic directly. We would still appreciate any input that you have about the use distribution on the site and how that internal drive might be made to work best with a different variety of uses, whether retail in the future might be something worth pursuing, if it's something we'd really like to see from the perspective of Planning Commission. The second is that the applicant has rescinded a previous effort to remove the development from the Lionsgate Reclaimed Water District. Under ordinance from 2002, there is a reclaimed water agreement, and this that goes throughout the entire Lionsgate subdivision. This development falls within that. And so there was some discussion about what would be the best path for water with this development for irrigation, and ultimately was decided that the homeowners association has sufficient capacity to take on this development's irrigation load. And so we'll be continuing to work with the developer and the homeowners association on the final numbers and how that'll all work out with their infrastructure going forward. Finally, the traffic issues that were referenced in the staff report have been primarily resolved by either the traffic engineer, that's some of the concerns that were brought up related to driveway length adjacent to Ray Road, parking location and drive aisle flow, or through conversations with both the traffic department and the legal departments related to the future of improvements that are necessary at Higley and Ray to bring level of service up to an appropriate level to approve the development. So I know that was a lot of information to present before you, but it was important to bring that forward given the changes that were made with the new design review submittal. We would like to reiterate that staff is seeking input on the following. The site planning and connections throughout the sites, the use opportunities with future zoning, but bearing in mind that the applicant is not looking to pursue that zoning in the immediate future, the open space and amenity design and distribution because of this being a higher density development, and then the elevation design that was presented before you in the elevations and the perspectives. With that, I turn it over to the commission for discussion. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commission.
All right, thank you, Noah. Anybody like to start with questions or comments for Noah? This one, Commissioner Bianchi.
Okay, thank you, Noah. So you answered the first question in regards to the MUL zoning possibility, so that's kind of off the table. Kind of lower hanging fruit, the pet park looks like it's been reduced from the exhibit you showed us tonight to what was in the staff report. Or maybe it was always that size, but I know in our staff report it looked like it was a chunk of that southwest corner.
Commissioner Bianchi, the pet amenity I do not believe was included in the submittal that was before you in the staff report. This is a new addition. I think that the conversation would be, is the pet amenity sufficient for a development of that size, but I don't believe it was included in the initial development proposal for the site.
Okay.
I think it was.
Was it?
Yeah, and I think he's right. I think it was considerably bigger than what we're seeing here.
At least what was in the first staff report. That's why I didn't know with the open space requirements or the percentages, if that was affecting them. That's why I asked. And then the second question I had was, so we're looking at a shortfall of parking. It sounds like you're trying to work something out there. I guess my concern, or my question is, on the actual site, could they start using that shopping center parcel for additional parking? Is that one of the reasons they want to bring it into the master site plan?
Commissioner Bianchi, so for the, I want to just lay out the strategy for parking and how the applicant is seeing that, just because it'll be important for understanding how much actually has to be taken care of from an excess parking standpoint. The reduction of those retail spaces that were initially counted in the parking count, those 2 retail spaces that were in the multifamily building, with those not being considered any further, there's the question is not so much about, I guess, under parking. I think we're fairly close to the count that's required. A lot of that has to do with how parking spaces are distributed on the site. And so we have a policy in the town where we really push to have multifamily developments park themselves completely, particularly the units that are, the spaces that are dedicated for individual units, right, which we count by bedrooms. And so this development, we've identified a few challenges with that. So for example, the underground parking area in buildings 1 and 2 has, I believe, 80 spaces to it. When for the number of bedrooms that are in those 2 buildings, because of the number of 2 and 3 bedroom units, it would require 90 some spaces. So some of that additional parking would have to go to some of the commercial areas or some of the areas outside of the gates. And so the strategy going forward is to ensure that every unit in the development has at least one dedicated space that's in a secured parking area, whether that's behind the gates on the south side of the development or in the underground parking deck that's underneath the first two buildings near Ray Road. The remainder of those spaces, so the spaces that remain for bedrooms, and then the visitor parking spaces as well, would have parking spaces that would be allocated for it outside of that, those gated areas. So you'll see that in around the commercial buildings, around the east side of that multifamily building. And then that would have to some extent, share with the spaces that are coming in for the commercial uses on a daily basis. And that's where the administrative use permit came from. For the number of spaces, I think that it's fairly close, and we weren't pursuing anything related to additional spaces on the shopping center parcels or anything like that.
Okay. I know we're getting close, but I'm just thinking, like you had said, at least there should be at least one spot for each unit, because I think with hundreds of multifamily units, I don't want to short on parking, and parking in the adjacent neighborhood, that's not going to be the answer. So that's why I'm curious about the adjacent shopping center parcel, if that could be used.
Commissioner Bianchi, that has been a common concern amongst neighbors that was with the rezoning, and it still is in my inbox now.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do is make sure that a parking study is submitted through that administrative use permit process, which has been submitted, and to ensure that just that commercial demand isn't going to conflict with that residential demand and create underparking problems at peak hours. But that'll be submitted concurrently with this application, and the space discrepancy is fairly minor and probably can be easily covered because of the number of spaces that are outside those gated areas. I think it's about 101 more than would be needed for the commercial areas, but I'd have to do another count with the new submittal.
Okay, thanks. I think as far as general comments on the landscaping, the line of a kind of a line of open space might be nice with some pedestrian connectivity. I was curious, they've got that pocket park on the north side of the parcel. I'm wondering if it's any benefit to bring that more towards the center where that cluster of parking is, to kind of create that open space and pedestrian connectivity. That's just my personal opinion. That may have already been looked at, because without it, it kind of looks rather separated apart and disjointed in my estimation. And then I think as far as elevations go, definitely when you look at Epicenter across the street, there's a variety of elevations there. And even the adjacent two-story or three-story multifamily across the street, there's not a lot of similarities there. I noticed this doesn't have any pitched roof. It's relatively flat, and I'd probably like to see some more roof articulation or something to kind of bring some more similarities to what's at the opposite corners. But other than that, that's my feedback. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Anderson.
Noah, thank you for the presentation. Just a few questions, concerns for you. First one is on the site plan for the multifamily, the location of the call box. I'm not sure if that's really the best location for it. So if all the residents still have a clicker or some sort of fob, they roll up to the gate will automatically open, they get in. Any visitors that are coming to the multifamily site that want to park there, if they're coming down Banning Street, they go into that entry, they can't access that gate, so they would travel east straight across the multifamily, head south down that entry to that gate. But the location of the call box, they have to kind of go around that little circle area to get to it, which really isn't that ideal. Same situation if they're coming off of Ray Road, they come south through that main entrance, bang a left and then a right to that gate and go around that little circle. So it seems like the only way to adequately enter that call box is to come down Higley Road and go through there. So I would ask that you kind of maybe look at that and see if they can maybe come up with a better solution for the call box location. Second concern I have is the courtyards in the multifamily. Has fire looked at this? Concern I have is emergency responders, is how do they get into the middle of that? Right now, they'd have to come in through the clubhouse. You need a knock box or something. And it'd be fire, police, EMS. So has fire looked at this, and have they thought about emergency responders getting into these courtyards?
Commissioner Anderson, I'll address both concerns that you brought forward. The first on the call box, just to clarify the two egress points for that. The one on the west side is an exit only. So what you are saying is valid and can be brought forward to Clint Emery. We can have a conversation about that with the developer to see if there's a location that would be more suitable, because I can see the traffic circulation concern, especially if you have a good number of vehicles coming in from Higley Road and you're, as a multifamily tenant, trying to get through that gate. That could present some challenges. So we can revisit that. I know that it's a pretty constrained location because of the distances and separations that are required for that call box and queuing. We'll take a look at that together with the appropriate parties. As for the fire access, fire has taken a look at this, and I don't believe that concerns were brought up directly from fire regarding that. So my approximation, I'd have to look at the plans more closely again, is that the knock boxes and everything that's required for access has been called out on plans and provided. But I can revisit that with Robert Camps as well, who reviewed this to make sure that everything's being addressed on that.
All right, and then the last concern I have is going back to the courtyards. Come July, August, there's no natural breezeway for these, so that's going to be a heat tunnel come July and August. There's no way for the heat to escape these courtyards. When I was in college back in Boston, I had a dormitory that had a courtyard in summertime. You know, you go in the middle of that thing, just, you know, summer in Boston, it's 80, 90, you know, it's humid or whatever. But it was just so uncomfortable in there. You had to get outside that courtyard to get a breezeway. So the concern I have is come the summer months that those areas are going to be pretty much unused. I don't think anybody's going to want to be in there because the heat's going to be it's just going to be trapped into these courtyards. There's no way for it to escape. So if there's ways that they can introduce some sort of cross breezeway through the buildings, I think it would help kind of alleviate that. Other than that, I do like the architecture. I like the use of volumes, color, and materials on this. Me personally, I like it when everything doesn't look the same on these corners. It just gives more variety and more interest in the architecture to these types of areas, so I would be okay. And I do like the architecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I just was going to weigh in, Noah, you had talked about if they ever decide to revisit the mixed-use zoning on the property. I guess I would just caution that I would be supportive of that if they wanted to come back in the future on something like that, but then that's going to be an additional parking impact on the site. So that would have to be looked at really closely as to how that could be accommodated, because again, I have the same concern that Commissioner Bianchi had about impacting the neighborhood with any parking and staff. And then as far as the elevations go, I think they're really nice. I don't have any issues, so thank you.
Commissioner Davis, we would, on the conversation of parking, we would revisit an AUP that's filed now and obviously would go back through the review process to make sure that we're taking those impacts into account. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody on the side? Yeah, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I figured this side should have some representation, so I decided I would speak. I very much enjoy the architecture. I think they've done a good job with the buildings, and I think it's interesting, and it'll be a place people will want to go. The parking, that is one thing that I would say that I'm concerned about. Being a study session item, I would just, encourage to make sure that it's sufficient as we get into the next phase of this, which I know that you will. And I myself don't remember the dog park on the first one. So either way, I think it does seem small, but I mean, that's also because the buildings may be massive. And maybe these people have those tiny little dogs that they carry instead of real dogs. But I don't know. So other than that, I think it's good.
All right.
There'll be a stipulation in the leases that they only have
Carry size dog. Anybody else? Commissioner Fay?
Yes, I do. So the two, this to me strikes me as an awful lot of stuff packed onto a site, and I think the applicant's probably trying to put too much juice for the squeeze here, and where it's coming out is in open space and parking. My calibrated eye was saying that the parking's not going to make it, and so I at every stage, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to, and the answer is go with underground parking or something, but I'm sure they don't want to spend for that much. But I think we do need to, at every juncture, we do need to look closely at the parking, and I think, gimmicks of squeezing a few spaces here and there is not going to be adequate. I think we'll see, and I would be unforgiving on this topic because the consequences of it fall onto the neighborhood adjacent. To that end, it also, well, there's a cross-access agreement. The other, looking at the open space, there was something in the report about, we think they're calculating the open space wrong, sidewalks, but I was surprised by that because it looked like they had more than enough open space by percentage. Again, my calibrated eye said to me that the numbers will work out, that they'll have the open space they need. Other than that dog park, and I think that is significant, not because I care about the size or necessarily their dogs, but because if it's not adequate, that's another impact that spills over onto the parks of the adjacent neighborhood. And my instinct tells me that this is a very minuscule acknowledgement, that probably there's some rework that needs to happen on that category. I don't want to address, I agree with Commissioner Davis, I don't want to address the future use, future zoning type thing. If they want to redo that, they need to redo that and come back through again. That'll change the equation. So I think that the right answer is to just withdraw that. It is not just to withdraw it, but to put it out of our minds. If that's going to change, that's going to change, and it'll change the equation. And they'll have to, I don't want to say start over again, but they'll have to come back again for that. The current application, open space percentages, reclaimed water. There on the east side, the middle of the east side, there's three driveways, one of which appears to be blocked in the middle. Is there a reason they're not just going to do a cross-access agreement there? I mean, it looks like they've already got one to the north and presumably one to the future commercial because they've got accesses there. And then they've got the one in the middle I'm a fan of cross-access agreements. Is there a reason that they're not doing that in the middle?
Commissioner Fay, I believe the primary reason for that, I think would have to boil down just to how much traffic is being filtered through that commercial development instead of staying within the new master site plan area and the drives that are being created for that to the south. I do not know the specifics of that. I can certainly follow up with you regarding that matter. I know that the drive aisle that comes through behind the gas station there, I believe it's a Valero, but I don't remember the brand off the top of my head. It started as a Valero. Comes south there and then just turns back into the development. And that's primarily to ensure that I believe that the parking on this site is accommodated along that drive aisle, which wasn't accommodated on the previous one, and then to avoid too much traffic relying on a straight kind of alignment all the way through from Higley through the existing commercial development all the way through to the Lionsgate neighborhood. I believe it's meant to kind of channel more of that traffic through the development itself. But I can visit with the applicant and follow up with that.
I think it should usually
Fay.
be city policy to encourage or strong arm more cross-access. And you can't completely require it because you can't force the adjacent landowner to necessarily sign a cross-access. My experience is commercial is usually more than happy. Mm-hmm. In fact, they want to hoist you upon their shoulders and parade you around the dais if you can get an apartment building with a cross-access agreement, but maybe not.
Commissioner Fay, I should also note that the drive aisle that you see in front of Building 2 parallel with Ray Road is existing already. There's a drive aisle there that allows for ingress and egress further down Ray Road, and it comes out where the driveway for this development is right now, and where that decel lane already exists at the center of this development. So that may play a role in the decision for this already, is because that drive aisle already exists and that cross-access already is a lot further along then establishing a new one through the existing development where it currently turns to the right and flows back out to Ray Road.
Okay. Fair enough. Look, as long as, I hope the reason we're not doing it is so they can squeeze an extra 3 parking spaces out of the width of that drive aisle, in the east. If it, it's a good to have item. Current application, open space issues, reclaim, okay, that's all my issues. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to point out that there is, underground parking entry. So I don't know if that was just a small amount, but that, if they're already taking the time to have some underground parking, that maybe they could expand that. But I just wanted to note that there is underground parking.
All right. Commissioner Blazer, you have anything?
I don't have anything to add.
All right. All right, then I'll throw in my 2 cents. I will just throw out there, I did have the opportunity to speak with the applicant this afternoon for a couple minutes, and shared my concerns, and biggest concern that I have is going to be the circulation on the site. I think that they've done well with what is there, but it does seem a little bit limiting. The other piece, just for note, because I will throw it out there. If I don't, I'll think about it all night, is the being able to work with the landowner on the pieces that are not involved in this. And I know that there's not a lot that can be done, but I would like to see some connectivity with regards to what's going to happen there with this site. I think it's important as we build out this corner as an anchor corner within what's become a character area for the town. I think that's important. I agree with Commissioner Anderson with regards to the airflow within those buildings. I just see that being a hot box in the summer. So I don't know how you address that, but it is something that I would definitely consider. Elevations I'm good with. I've no problem with the elevations. I like them. I think that the buildings look nice. I would be concerned with parking. That is a big piece on this with regards to, I had initially written down numbers, and the numbers all add up as far as the actual sheer numbers, but are they in the right places is kind of my concern. I would not like to see on-street parking on either Banning or within the neighborhood at some level. So that would be an issue. And then one question that I did have with regards to along Ray Road, the entry point that is east of Banning, that looks like a decel lane. Is that going to be a full decel lane, or is that just the way the schematic is?
Chair Simon, I believe that's set to be a full decel lane. You'll see with the driveway kind of angled at an even greater angle than Ray Road travels at. That's to accommodate the decel lane channeling into the Ray Road entrance there.
Okay. I'd just like to make sure that we note that we should have decel there. I'm sure traffic's looked at this, but we have, in essence, 3 entries within a 500-foot space. And I could just see that becoming a rear end situation. I think that has all of my notes, so that's all I've got. Do you have anything else for us, or did you get what you need from us?
Chair Simon and Commission, I believe we've received the input that we need to go forward, so we appreciate your consideration.
All right, perfect. Unless there's anything else from up here, I will call that one. All right, thanks, Noah. Good job. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about our regular meeting agenda. We currently have items on the consent agenda are DR 2165 Keystone. We've got a DR 20 design, the Spring Hill Suites. We have a continuance of Morrison Ranch multifamily and a continuance of Perform Air International. Are there any of those items, I guess 7 or 8, that anybody would like to hear or have questions on? We're okay leaving those on consent? All right, and then the Whataburger, we do have a note that they're looking for a continuance, but Ashley, you're going to present, I mean, not, I'm sorry. My mind just totally went blank. Samantha, You're going to present on that, correct? Okay, so we'll leave that on the non-consent items. So with that, and we've got the LDC text amendment, so we're good, Ava, there? Okay, so with that, we'll leave the agenda as is. We'll take about a
Oh,
quick,
wait, Chairman, can I ask, we've got this email about the,
yeah.
we're not addressing that?
Well, we are addressing it. However,
time?
we'll address it during the
Okay.
meeting, if that's
Sorry,
okay.
I misunderstood. Okay.
Okay. Is that okay? Okay. All right, perfect. Well, so we'll go ahead and take a quick 5-minute. We'll come back for our regular meeting. So I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. All right, we ready? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all rise. All right, can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yeah.
Commissioner Fay? Commissioner Blazer?
Here.
Commissioner Bianchi?
Here?
Vice Chairman Mund?
Here?
Chairman Simon?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Oops, thank you. All right, so communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town, but not on the agenda. Oh, I did. Skip over approved journal. Well, Commissioner Blazer said he wanted to get out of here really quick, so I'm just trying to truncate
Wow.
our meeting.
Very first meeting, and you're already skipping over the board.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Thanks, Chairman. As a matter of fact, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the past meeting as written.
All right, have a motion on the table from the vice chair. Do I have a second? We're approving the agenda.
I meant the agenda that we discussed in the last meeting, which was the study session, so my apologies. I'd like to approve the agenda in this motion.
All right, so I've got a motion to approve the agenda by the vice chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Blazer, seconds. All those in favor? Oh, wait, we have to vote. Please vote. Motion carries. I have to get used to using that. It's been a full year of not doing it, so. All right. Okay, so now we can move on to communications from citizens. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town, but not on the agenda. The commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. I do not have any comment cards. Do we have anybody who would like to speak? All right, not seeing any. We'll move on to the report from council liaison. Welcome to Councilmember Anderson, and this is your first, so make it count. No, I'm just kidding.
Make it count for you all, because I know how quickly you want to get through it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for your service. We count ourselves lucky to have you serving in our community and all the time that you take, including our alternates, which are out in the audience out there. Thank you for your time that you spend helping us and supporting us here in Gilbert. I have just one item very quickly to let you know about as kind of a current event item. You've been hearing a lot about the Colorado River and the conditions on the Colorado River. Don't be deceived by some of the articles coming out saying in Arizona's running out of water. That's not the case at all. But we are at a point where we need to seriously consider actions, all the municipalities in the valley, and there are actually 7 basin states that share water out of the Colorado River, and we all need to come together and figure out how we're going to conserve water on the river so that we don't get to a point where it becomes a dry riverbed. And that is a possibility in 2 or 3 years unless we take action, and we're hoping that there's been some positive things that have happened just recently. 6 of the 7 basin states have drafted some points of agreement that they're going to share, I think, with the public. Unfortunately, California did not get on board with that. California has somewhat of a tainted view of how water is used, and it's going to probably take the federal government to get them to move and work with the rest of the basin states on how we can conserve water. Right now, that's the main focus of our efforts in Arizona is conservation, how we can conserve water versus shutting water off. And that's what you'll be seeing in the future. There may be, as time progresses over the next 2 or 3 years, if the conditions continue the way they are, you'll likely see the town with some ordinances that will be geared towards conservation, whether it's limiting turf, the types of plant material that we use, things like that may happen in the future. But right now, we have, as a matter of fact, I have a meeting with other Valley leaders Friday with Senator Sinema to talk about strategies for water in Arizona, so I'm looking forward to that. But please keep your eye on the ball, which is conservation, which is what our discussion should be about, not how we limit growth, but how we can conserve and work together to get through this. As you know, the snowpack this year has been above normal, and it'll probably take 10 or 12 of those in a row to solve this issue. The ironic thing about the whole issue with water is that while about a third of our portfolio uses Colorado River water, but another third uses water on the Salt River basin, and those reservoirs are 70 or 80% full. And what could be very ironic is if they get so full that we have to do a release into the Salt River. That would be rather ironic to watch happen. So we hope that, but we're in good shape. The saying still goes that there's a shortage on the river, but there's not a shortage at the tap. And we want to make sure that the public understands that. Mr. Chair, that's all I'll share with you tonight as a current event item. Thank you again for your service.
Well, thank you very much, and we're excited to work with you. So welcome aboard. I don't know if that's a thing, but welcome aboard. So, all right. Moving to the public hearing consent item agenda items. All items listed below are considered the public hearing consent calendar. The commission may, by a single motion, approve any number of items where, after opening the public hearing, no persons request the items be removed from the consent calendar. If such a request is made, the commission shall then withdraw the item from the public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and separate motion or separate action. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion. And we're leaving the consent agenda as written unless there are any changes at this point. So we've got DR 21-65 Keystone, DR 22-169 Spring Hill Suite Hotel, and then we've got a continuance of number 9 DR 22-63 Morrison Ranch Multifamily, and a continuance of number 10 DR 22-153 Perform Air International. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent. Items number 7, DR 21-65 Keystone. Item number 8, DR 22-169 Spring Hill Suites Hotel Northside at Santan Village. And the continuance of number 9, DR 22-63 Morrison Ranch Multifamily. And the continuance of number 10, DR 22-153 Perform Air International.
All right, thank you. I have a second by Commissioner Fay. So I've got a motion by the Vice Chair and a second by Commissioner Fay. All those, cast your votes. And the motion carries 7-0. All right, moving on to public hearing non-consent. Non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by a separate motion. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. And we've got one item on the non-consent, two items, but we'll go to number 11. Samantha, you're up with DR 21-51 Whataburger and master site plan. And do you want to address this email that you gave to us, or would you like me to address it?
I'll bring it up, and
Okay,
I have a slide
perfect.
for public
Thank you.
input. Okay, thank you, Chairman and Commission. Samantha Novotny, Planner 1. Okay, this is a master site plan for a vacant lot in the City Gate area. And the first phase of this master site plan is going to include a Whataburger. So the project is a little bit south of Baseline, east of Higley Road, and you can see that here in my slide, just at the southeast corner of Michelle Way and Higley Road, highlighted there in the yellow outline. It's about 3.7 acres. The master site plan includes 3 lots, and you can faintly see the black outline within the yellow. Those are the 3 lots. And the Whataburger is planned to go on the northernmost lot. And so that's lot 3. And the middle and southern lot, 2 and 1, will come at a later phase. There we go. Access is proposed off of Higley Road. There is an ingress-egress point right there, right kind of in the middle, and then a shared private road to the east that kind of runs the perimeter of the eastern perimeter of this master site plan, and that'll be shared with the eastern neighbor. I do want to note that lots 2 and 1, they're showing an approximate square footage of the middle lot of about 2,500 square feet and 4,000 square feet for the building to the south. Those will come at later phases, and again, when they are ready, they will come through a design review amendment. This master site plan just focuses on the plan overall, overall site improvements, and the Whataburger. So drilling in a little closer to just the Whataburger lot, it is 1.45 acres of the total 3.7. Again, like I said, it's going to be the first user to develop. This is in regional commercial zoning, and it has a by right shared parking provision at 1 space per 200 square feet. So although I say that each lot is able to self-park itself based on the total square footage proposed across all 3 lots, they can share amongst themselves, each of the users, but each of the parcels thus far shows that they park themselves. Let's see, I've got some numbers here. 63 is provided, it's shown on the plans, and 49 is required. So they have a plethora of parking to play with. We'll jump to the landscape plan here. In 2014, there was a streetscape plan and open space plan that was approved. It was a pretty comprehensive one that encompassed about 61 acres, focusing specifically on the City Gate area. It covered a lot of aesthetic details like pedestrian benches, streetscape sections, screen walls, signage, a plant palette, and I've provided a couple of screenshots there for you. You can see the pedestrian benches and the screen walls. So this landscape plan really drew from the compliance with that open space plan. Staff worked with the applicant to make sure that the plant palette and all of that was uniformed with the approvals back from 2014. In code, the landscape requirement percentage is 15%, and they are meeting that at almost double at 28%. Okay, we'll jump to elevations again, just for the Whataburger, because this is the only building that's being proposed so far. Again, when remaining pads are ready for review, that will come through a design review amendment. You can see that the building uses browns and tans, and the corporate orange color is used in a minimal fashion just on the canopy. The canopy is over, not the drive-through, but over a couple of the windows and the entry there. Signage is just for reference. It does, of course, use that corporate orange, but they will have to come in for a sign review at a later time. That's not, wall signage is not included tonight. This is another slide showing the east and west elevations, similar to the other slide that you saw, and then a sampling of the colors and materials. Short and sweet presentation. Staff recommends to approve the findings of fact and approve DR 2251, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And to address the public input that we received, it was received around 1 PM today, well after the staff report had been issued to you as the Planning Commission. Let me read a copy here. It was, one moment, you each have a copy, but I'll just read it here. It's from a Gilbert resident named Paolo Caspredit, and it seems they have two pieces of feedback. They would like the agenda item to be postponed to a future date as they feel that the neighborhood notice was not received or performed to LDC standards. And the second request is they are not in favor of the right turn decel lane entry along Higley. That's the only public input I've received thus far. And to address point number one, the applicant has satisfied all of town requirements for the public notice. We have pretty clear provisions spelled out in the code, and they've satisfied everything in that regard. Okay, back to my question slide. I'll take any and all feedback.
All right, thank you, Samantha. Anybody have any questions or comments for Samantha at this point?
Yes.
Yeah, Commissioner Fay.
When you said that we've got pretty clear guidelines and they've met all of them, isn't one of them that they have to notify any HOA within 1,000 feet?
Chair and Commissioner Fay, yes, that is correct.
And did they do that?
Yes, they did. And part of the proof of that is they provide affidavits of their mailing and the sign posting. So we did receive both mailings by the deadlines that we had set for the applicant.
So they did actually notify the HOA to the south, is what I'm getting at.
Yes, and the applicant provided, as part of their submittal, they provide a list of the HOAs that are within the radius. They have to also show a radius of 1,000 feet and 300 feet for the parcel owners.
Okay, that's the specifics I wanted.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
So, not to hop on the HOA, I think for clarification, I think, is this like one of those scenarios, this happened a few months ago, where mailings went to the actual HOA, but there's like a management company that actually interacts with the residents? Is that like the same scenario that happened here?
Chair Simon and Commissioner Anderson, I can't absolutely confirm that, but that is a common scenario that does happen. HOAs do have a PO box. They may or may not check in a timely manner. Sometimes they prefer communication by email, but in our code, it's strictly by mailing, first-class mail.
Okay, so that's probably what happened, and you do have the affidavit, so that's great. In terms of just my comments on here, I don't have any problem with the architecture. I like the materials. At the end of the day, it's a Whataburger, so I think everything looks fine for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Commissioner Fay.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was more focused on the, I got distracted, you talked fancy. As far as the actual applicant, this is actually, in my mind, a very good one. This is a model to be, I really harp on these because I really focus on the drive-through and where the traffic holding or where the people who are backed up. I don't know that Whataburger, it's not a Dutch Bros, but maybe it is, I don't know. But when this is a really good example of when this traffic backs up, it's all going to be held on the site. You're not going to have any headaches on Higley Road. And the decel lane on Higley Road, I think, is actually a very positive. I don't know that it's controversial, but I think to the extent it's at all, I think it's positive. So I'm all plus marks on this one.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? No? I'll just add before I bring it back up to the dais that I would agree with everything that Commissioner Fay said. I feel like if we have sent out or the applicant has sent out the notifications as required and we have the affidavits, I'm satisfied that that's been adhered to. And with regards to the decel lanes, I appreciate that there's decel lanes here. I don't like it when we have so many entries stacked up and then there's no decel to get traffic out of the way. So I would be in favor for this. So unless there's any other comments from any of the other chairmen, or chair members, I will move it up to the dais for discussion and close the public hearing. All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you, Samantha.
Thank you.
We'll bring it back up to the dais for any conversation and/or a motion if there is one.
I can go ahead and motion if we're good.
I'll entertain.
Motion approved, DR 22-51.
All right, I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Anderson,
Second.
and I have a second by Commissioner Fay. All those in excuse me, cast your vote. And the motion carries 7-0. So that passes, so we're good. All that anticipation. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to item 12, Eva Z. We've got a zoning 22-18, the LDC text amendment.
Good evening, Chairman and Commission. As mentioned, what is before you this evening is a text amendment to the terms for building attached, lot line, front and rear, and a graphic within our zoning ordinance. On a continual basis, staff seeks way to improve the content and the usefulness of the Land Development Code, and staff has realized that there seems to be deficiencies in how we determine front yards on multiple lot types, and also the definition for building attached could be more descriptive. So starting with building attached, the current definition states a structure which has at least part of a wall in common with another building or is connected by a solid or semi-solid roof structure. What is of concern to staff is the phrase connected by a solid or semi-solid roof structure. The cause for concern can be shown in these pictures. On the left side, you see attachments to main homes that match the architecture of the main home and seem to be integrated and are close to the main home. On the right, you see attachments that are attached by a solid or semi-solid roof structure, but may not appear or function as one main structure. So to try to get more examples of what's shown on the left, staff is recommending the additional language, and that is to be attached to the main structure. The addition should either have a wall in common with the building or a continuous roof line, a maximum separation of 10 feet, direct doorways under the continuous roof line that lead from one structure to the other to make sure it functions as one structure, and of course matching architecture to assure the building appears to be a single structure. Staff is also recommending that the language or is connected by a solid or semi-solid roof structure be removed, as the additional language is more descriptive. Also, when I was researching building attached, I came across a definition for attached structure. And building and structure are used interchangeably in the zoning ordinance, so I thought having two definitions could be confusing. I did a word search for attached structure in our zoning code, and it is not used anywhere in the code. So I think this is just an antiquated definition that I recommend be removed from the zoning ordinance so as not to cause confusion. Moving on to front yards. As many of you are aware, there are different types of lots within the town. There's corner lots, through lots, interior lots. However, when you look at the lot line for the front yard, for the corner lot, it states that it should be the shortest lot line abutting a street. That seemed rather arbitrary, and maybe the longer lot line would be more in harmony with the existing neighborhood. Also, when you get down to the bottom of this under other, it says for the lot types other than those listed above, the front lot line shall be established at the time of final subdivision plat or at the time of building permit. Well, that just tells you when it should be established. It's not criteria for determining how to establish the front yard. So staff is recommending that additional criteria for determining a front yard be added to the zoning code. For interior lots, which make up the majority of the lots in the town, the definition would remain that the front property line shall be the line abutting a street. But for lots with double or multiple frontages, and this would include the corner lots, the primary frontage shall be determined based upon the majority of the following 4 criteria: the direction the front door faces, what's shown on a recorded subdivision plat, and if it's not shown on a recorded subdivision plat, what is consistent and in harmony with the subdivision design. And in the case where there may not be a subdivision, as is consistent and in harmony with other adjacent front yards. And I really think that criteria 2 and 3 are the most important, having been the person who has determined front yards in various municipalities for over 20 years. Those are the 2 that I rely on, and those are not in the Gilbert Code. We don't look at what's in harmony with the neighborhood, and I think that we should. And then lastly, to look at the street classification and look at which street has the lower classification. As stated, the corner lot I thought was arbitrary to use the shortest, so I recommend that we strike that, and it's covered under the new language that talks about lots with multiple frontages. And also strike other, where it just tells you when you should establish the front yard, not how to establish the front yard. In addition, looking at other municipal codes and the American Planning Association best practices, many include language such as this, which is proposed. That language would require a homeowner who doesn't have a front yard designated or who's wishing to change their front yard to have to notify the neighbors. It's not a large area, but it would be neighbors within 300 feet, so it would be the immediate neighbors and the neighbors across the street, and that the notifications would go out and the zoning administrator would wait 15 days before making a determination. That would give neighbors a chance to give input if they felt it necessary. And then after the decision is made, it also allows the neighbors or the property owner to appeal the decision to the Board of Adjustment. We do not have that language in the current zoning code, and I do propose that it be added. When looking at front yard, I came across the definition of rear yard. And that definition says the rear yard is a singular lot line opposite the front lot line. I recommend that we take out the word singular, and as shown in these illustrations, there are many multi-sided lots or irregularly shaped lots where perhaps there is more than one rear yard. Perhaps on these cases, there would be 2 rear yards that are opposite the front. Lastly, there is a graphic in our code, and I recommend that we remove the phrase, "the front is typically the narrowest portion of the lot facing a street," because again, I think that's arbitrary, and there's many subdivision designs where perhaps the shorter side should not be the front. But we do have the language below that that tells everybody if you believe you have an irregular lot or a lot layout that is not depicted, to contact the planning department for the setback determination. So that concludes my presentation. The recommendation is before you, and I do recommend that you forward to Town Council approval of the text amendments related to the definitions of building attached, lot line front and rear, and the lot type graphic. And that concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions for me at this time.
All right, thank you, Ava. Any questions for Ava this time? Commissioner Bianchi.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Eva. So I think you actually touched upon it. So the updated definitions, at least for the front yard, my question was, are they consistent with adjacent cities or APA guidance, or is Gilbert kind of unique in coming up with these specific definitions?
They are consistent with what other municipalities use. I looked at our neighbors. I looked at Chandler Mesa, Paradise Valley, where I worked before, Gilbert, Goodyear, Glendale, and then I went through the APA website and the APA dictionary of terms.
Okay. And I think the second question I had, I think you already asked about the front yard change designation. You already put in that there's notification and recourse in there too. So I'm good. And as well as the graphics, as guidance, those are always helpful. So I was glad to see those. So thanks, Eva. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Yeah, Commissioner Fay.
Eva, I was looking back through these, and I didn't have any comments previously, and usually I hate to, and I think it's very non-controversial changes here, but I was looking at the attached roof, those attached roof connections. Has this ever come up in Gilbert before? Or is this preemptively anticipating an issue?
No, this has come up,
Okay.
and we would like more description on determining it.
Okay. It struck me that all those pictures, I'm like, man, this does not look like Gilbert, so I thought maybe this had never even come up and we're just being proactive, but, okay. Like I said, none of this strikes me as controversial.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Ava, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question for you on, and I'm glad you brought this screen back up. How did staff come up with the 10 feet distance for maximum separation between structures? Because if you're looking at the two examples on the left, I mean, those distances look like they exceed 10 feet. So I'm just kind of curious how staff came up with that magic number for a maximum distance.
Chairman, Commissioner Anderson, the separation requirement I put into Paradise Valley's code when I worked there. Because those were larger lots, we had a 20-foot separation, but I thought that would be too much on the smaller lots in Gilbert. I spoke to our building official and the fire marshal, and they were both comfortable with 10 feet. It would allow, if you have the doors underneath it, for the doors to open, and you would still have room to get around.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I'm looking at the bottom image there. You have a 6-foot French door in the front, and it looks like the 3 feet on each side, so that's 12 feet right there. So I was just kind of curious how you guys came up with the 10 feet for a maximum distance. Thank you.
And certainly, if anybody feels that should be changed, we can look at that. Or perhaps, for instance, the one with the French doors, we measure from the eaves rather than the walls.
All right, anybody else? No? If I don't have anything, my only question really on that section 2.0, the terms and the definition of attached, just looking at it from, I don't know if it's a legality perspective, reading contract language, there's nothing that, I mean, it says the structure which has, I'm assuming is inclusive of all of those items, not or. So it may be just kind of some.
Thank you, Chairman, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
There's just a typo on this slide. After at least part of a wall in common with another building or the remaining 4.
Okay, perfect. Other than that, I have no issue with it, so unless there's any other questions or anything for Ava, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back up to the dais. So, thank you, Ava. All right, open for conversation and or a motion if there is one.
You ready for a motion?
If there's no
Anybody
conversation.
else? Do you have discussion?
Well, I was just going to make a comment that, I spent some time as the variance officer here in Gilbert, and a number of the cases that had come through, had they known about being able to just throw some sticks up and do it, they probably could have gotten it done. So on the bright side, at least from what I've seen, a lot of the people in Gilbert were at least not that innovative. But I think it's good. So that's all my discussion.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So with that, I would move to approve Z 22-18, request to amend the land development code related to the definitions for building attached, building setback, and building setback area.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Bianchi. Do I have a second?
I'm sorry, Chair, may I interrupt? If you could read the language on the screen, it's not the building setback, it's the building attached lot line and lot line graphic.
Okay, do you want
okay.
to amend your motion?
Yes. Can I amend it as per the direction of the
Yes.
planning director? Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion to approve.
I'll second that,
and
Chairman.
a second by the vice chair. All those in favor, sorry, Cast your vote. All right, and the motion carries 7-0. I should know when it starts flashing in front of me that that's what I need to do, but. All right, with that, we will go to administrative items. Administrative items are for the commission discussion and action. It is to the discretion of the majority of the commission regarding public input requests on any administrative item. Persons wishing to speak to the administrative item should complete a comment card indicating the item number in which you wish to address. Commission has, may or may not accept the public comment, and I don't have any public comment cards, so we'll go ahead and jump to Planning Commission minutes. The minutes from the December 7th and the January 4th meetings. I need a motion to approve. Do we need separate motions on those, or can we do it all in one?
I don't know, can I ask, did you guys get the minutes in your packets? They were not in mine. Did you guys get them?
Thought?
Okay. So I guess the question is, do we
The
want to
question is,
continue that?
we probably should continue that. Ava, we're going to continue the minutes because we did not receive them in the packet.
I apologize, thank you. I'll make sure that you receive double sets of minutes sent in your next packet. Great.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to continue, and then I'll need a second on that.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue the approval of the minutes from December 7th, 2022 and January 4th, 2023, please.
All right, I got a motion by the vice chair. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a second by Commissioner Bianchi. Cast your votes. And motion carries 7-0. All right. Don't have executive session this evening. Reports from the chairman and members of the commission. Did I jump past? Oh, no, I didn't. Sorry. I'm just all over the place tonight. Anybody up here have anything they would like to throw out to the greater good? No, any injury stories you'd like to share with us? No?
No, Chairman, luckily I have not been injured in a little while, so I'll be working on it, though, I assure you.
All right. Ava, we'll go to you with service manager updates, current events.
I would just like to welcome Councilmember Anderson as our new liaison and look forward to having you join us every Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. Also wish Ashley McDonald a happy birthday. And that's all I have to report at this time.
Well, I heard Noah was singing happy birthday tonight, but no, we're good. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all. We'll see you. Our next meeting is March 4th or 1st? Is it the 1st? March 1st. It is March. All right. Have a good evening.